this presentation so that once it is completed, we are able to upload it and it can be a future resource for people to come back to whenever needed. So let's get started. This is the student organization treasurer's training. If you're here for something else, you're in the wrong place. So we'll go through some different topics, how to make purchases, reimbursements, and talk about your responsibility as a treasurer or an officer overseeing the finances of your student organization. Quick disclaimer, for certain groups, specifically sport clubs and some of the fraternities and sororities overseen by the FSL office, some of this information may be different. We will try to point out where those differences are, but look out for additional training or announcements from your advisor or the bodies that oversee those specific organizations. We also wanted to note that all these procedures are subject to change based on situations, as we're all well aware of in this current day climate. Things change and can change quickly, so just be aware that things on here may be different down the line, depending on how things go. We want to make everyone aware, SGA has a new initiative this year. They are working on student engagement grants. These grants are built to support students with financial needs that prevent them from participating in UD clubs or organizations in the past. The applications will be open each semester after Up the Orgs, and there will be about a 2-week period that people can apply for those. You'll find out more information about that from SGA and Up the Orgs once it occurs here in the future, in the next week. So be on the lookout for that. The consideration will be on an annual basis. So if someone gets selected this year, they may, they'll have to reapply next year to get another grant, and the funding is limited to $250 per student per academic year. If you have any questions, email sgafinance@udane.edu. More information about this should be being sent out to officers of organizations for you to send out to members or potential members in case they need that assistance. So what is a student organization account? Student organizations exist within the University of Dayton community. All the financial activities of the clubs on campus is seen as financial activity of the university. The purchases must exercise good judgment in authorizing expenditures and regardless of the source of the funds. Those who are making the decisions, i.e. the treasurers or the officers in charge of that, need to keep in mind the university's mission and commitments when making purchases. All student organizations have a unique, what we have abbreviated as FOPL. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. This number just represents the organizational, where the money sits within the university's general ledger. And the general ledger is a complete record for anyone wondering. All student organizations must manage money in accordance with the university's spending policies, and all those policies and the procedures needed to follow them are documented in 1850, which we will review later as well. An agenda for the evening, we'll talk about the role as a treasurer, 1850 and the financial management tool, which is available to all student organizations. We'll kind of briefly touch on those, and then towards the end, we'll actually walk through those tools as well. We'll talk about how to make purchases or reimburse members if needed. We'll talk about the policies and procedures that accompany those. We'll talk about depositing funds and if your organization is trying to accept donations, which is very big with one day in the semester. We'll talk about some other general things to know about managing money at the university, and at the end, we'll also talk about funding opportunities available to organizations. So as a treasurer, your role is to oversee the financial affairs of the organization. We have on here add financial transactions in 1850. We no longer have to manually add the transactions. We will now be working with a new system that will update those as they hit the university's general ledger account. You are still responsible for adding the payment request so that the Center for Student Involvement is aware of purchases your organization is trying to make. You're in charge of completing the purchases, as we mentioned, or delegating that task. And you are in charge of reconciling the money in 1850 against the account statements. So We have this new system that will automatically update, but it is not perfect. So please make sure that your organization is keeping track of its expenses and when different expenses and revenues are hitting the account and managing those correctly. How to manage the funds. As we mentioned, 1850 will track 100% of the organization's members' events, money, everything is tracked through 1850. On here is where you will request to spend the money. It's where you can track your account balances, all of your transactions with the groups. It's where you can run reports on your finances, excuse me. And it's also where the student organizational financial management tool can be located. Runway purchases will be sent through Runway, but then those will also be tracked in 1850. This is also where you'll request Runway reimbursements for us to be aware of through workflows. And this, to reserve a Center for Student Involvement PCard, please note that we'll talk about this more in the future, but there are 3 Center for Student Involvement PCards. Each organization is not able to get its own, which we'll talk about in a minute. 1850 is also where we can track funds being deposited into the organization's account. As I mentioned earlier, each organization has something called a FOPL, which stands for Fund, Organization, Account, Program, Activity, and Location. This just allows the university's accounting system to track expenses very detailed oriented. And the main thing to focus on this will be the fund. The fund will be the major change or the major difference between each group's financial account. As I mentioned, we'll do an 1850 demo after we get through some more of these slides. But when on 1850, please remember to have your officers up to date. You can do this by going through, once you get to your organization's page, you go to the dashboard option on the left and you select officers. Please make sure that all the officers are up to date and that their roles are also up to date. This is how we can get specific information to each group or to each officer of the group to make sure that they are getting the most specific information. We're not blasting every member of your organization with information every time we need to talk to somebody. The Center for Student Involvement is where most of the financial management forms will live, not to be confused, but you will go to your page, which will show you how to do. The financial management tool, as I mentioned, is also on there. And under each of your pages, the accounting book is there for you to see how much your organization has spent, brought in, and what the current balance is. As it says, please make sure you update your treasurer. We'll log on when we do the demo. This is what the financial management tool will look like. At the top of the page is also the link to the financial management tool. As I've said, it will be available to find on multiple pages on 1850, so don't feel like you need to write down that link right now. We will show you where to find that tool on 1850. The 1850 financial request form, all purchases must be submitted through 1850, whether that's Runway, a reimbursement, a PCard request, they will all go through there. We have logic built into the questions so that it'll only ask you for the information that is needed for that request. Hopefully this will cut down on repetitive information and some back and forth emailing that may have occurred in the past. CSI will communicate approval and denial and forward any receipts or confirmations that may be needed depending on the purchase. So when making purchases, there are 4 main ways to make purchases here at the university as a student organization. If you are looking to make a purchase on campus, you'll use something called a requisition form. This form basically gives your organization the authorization to use its FOPL at different places, such as the bookstore and the copy center on campus. Please, when making purchases on campus, use this form and not a PCard, because organizations should be, while everyone, all the different offices work at the University of Dayton, not everyone is aware of taxes and how to charge student organizations. So when you bring a PCard in, they may not read it and understand that you are a student organization at the University of Dayton. The requisition form shows them that, and it works a lot better when those are used on campus. When making purchases off campus, we have the three main ways we work with student organizations to do that. The first one is Runway, which we'll walk through. It just acts as a what we call an e-procurement system. There are different businesses and organizations with their information on there. You can go through their catalogs and look. If you have a invoice, say you're having some sort of event and you need to pay a DJ or some sort of external party to come in and provide a service at that, and they give you an invoice, that is something called a payment request that is also available on 1850, and we will show you where that button is located, or excuse me, that's on Runway. We will show you where that's located. The purchasing card, as I mentioned, works just like a PCard, or a purchasing card works just like a credit card here at the university, and can be used at stores when things are not available to be purchased on Runway. An example of this would be you need to run to the store to get paper plates for an event that you're having. You could go check out a PCard, you request it. If we have one available, we can make sure to, we'll communicate that, set up a time for a member of the organization to come in, pick up the card, go to, like, say, a Kroger or a Walmart, make that purchase, bring the card and the receipt back to the Center for Student Involvement, and we will assign that charge on the back end to the group's full poll, as we mentioned earlier, and the group's good to use whatever they need to purchase locally there. The last option is reimbursement. Let's say that there's a last second expense that needs to be done, and somebody uses a personal credit card or personal funds to do that. They can submit those receipts either through Runway or something called a travel form and be reimbursed for those funds. Please note that these also have to be tax exempt, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it is another option. We like to reserve this one for last because it does tie up funds, and it does take a little bit of time for those funds to get back to a member of the organization. So we kind of reserve that. We hope that that's something that we don't have to do, but we do understand that emergencies come up and the option is available if needed. As we mentioned, Runway is the university's e-procurement system. It allows purchases from approved suppliers. We most commonly use this for national dues, registration fees. If an organization is looking to make a donation to an external organ, if a student organization is looking to make a donation to an external organization, we can also process that through Runway. All students are assigned a shopper role in Runway, so any member of the organization can go in and make a selection from the vendors on Runway, or create what, as we mentioned earlier, that payment request. They can then assign that to the treasurer, and the treasurer can then assign it to somebody on the CSI staff. We just ask that the treasurer makes the assignments to the staff members so that we don't have 5 different orders coming from the same organization. We want to try to focus that and make it more efficient, in that treasurers are the ones that are assigning the card to CSI staff members. Please note that one of the differences, as we mentioned earlier, sports clubs, if you are making a purchase on Runway, please assign your cards to your advisor, Maham Khan. They are the one that are able to review that and help sports clubs more easily. We will log on to Runway later after we get through the slides, but please note that you can do so either by going to udane.edu/runway, or if you log into your purchase site on the front page, there is a Runway link on the right-hand side. Runway reimbursements. As we mentioned, we would like purchases to be made through Runway or purchasing card, but we understand that emergencies do happen. Last second purchases are going to happen. So if a reimbursement needs to be made, it can be made through Runway. Please note that it needs to follow the purchasing policies of the universities. All reimbursements are processed through Runway. The only exception to this is a travel reimbursement. If you're going on a trip, that's a different process. But if there's any event on campus and you go to make a purchase, that will go through Runway. All payees are called suppliers, whether it's a company, a student, an employee, they're called a supplier. It's a little confusing on Runway, we understand, but that's how the system is set up. If a student needs to be set up for reimbursement Runway, click the Add Supplier button, which we can, I will show you where that is located during the demo as well, but we understand that that's confusing in that a student is called a supplier, so please make note of that. As we mentioned, the purchasing cards, they act just like a university credit card. The CSI office has 3 of those that can be used for non-Runway purchases. Please note that we do have over 270 organizations and 3 cards available. We do this to try to, one, we have to manage all of the receipts and all the transactions that occur with that. So that's why there are 3 cards available. But please note that we want this to, we want those cards to be available as much as possible. So we do ask that when you make that request that you have in mind returning that card within 24 hours. That way we can have it available to other organizations when needed as soon as possible. You must fill out the financial request form on 1850. If you try to come into the Center for Student Involvement and just ask to use a P card, you will likely be turned away because we do have such a high volume of requests for those P cards. We can't just allow people to walk in and use them. Also note that you will get an approval email from somebody in the CSI office or the student org's money email. So just because you submit the form on 1850 and it's submitted, that does not mean it's automatically approved. You should receive the email, or you can also check the workflow status on 1850 to see if the first step has been approved. With this, the individual borrowing the card must guarantee that the purchases are tax exempt and that the items are delivered correctly. One thing we do want to mention is to avoid big or membership stores such as Sam's Club or Costco. They are very particular about if you have a membership that the credit card you use to pay has to be the same as the membership. They usually do not allow groups to use a family membership and then to use the university's tax exempt credit card to make a purchase. And that's where the discrepancy can come in. If a purchase does have tax on it and it's not realized until the card is brought back, it is the organization's responsibility to get that fixed as soon as possible. And if not, there'll be some consequences assessed to that if it's not corrected in a timely manner. Tax deductible donations. If you have a member of your group or somebody that wants to make a donation to your organization, the donation must go through the university's advancement website. Checks and credit cards can go through at udane.edu/give. Make sure they put your organization's name in the comments so that the advancement office can easily organize and make sure those get to the proper FOPL when depositing those funds. Donations collected by your organization on behalf of another nonprofit organization should not be deposited. So for example, if let's say the Red Cross group is collecting funds for the Red Cross Society, we encourage you as an organization to direct those donations directly to the Red Cross instead of the Red Cross organization, because it just creates some tax inconsistencies when an organization collects those funds and then immediately tries to turn around and donate them to another organization. If you feel that there is something if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to the Center for Student Involvement, me or Gwen, as I mentioned, after the presentation. We can kind of talk through that and figure out a good way to make that work. Be sure to indicate donations at the box office when making deposits. So you can take your donations to the box office and deposit them. You can also bring them to the Center for Student Involvement. Note how we say tax receipt for one donation needs to go to advancement. If you also have if you get a donation in person, it can go to the box office. What we're talking about here is if you go home or a member of the organization goes home and you tell them you joined the math club and your parents are excited and want to give you $20 to give to the club, that donation can go through the box office. If you're trying to get a donor to donate $100 or $1,000 or something, a large amount, and they want to be able to deduct that donation from their taxes, that is where it needs to go through advancement so they can get what's called a tax deduction receipt. So just if you're trying to collect donations or any of that, please make sure to ask them if they're looking for that tax deductible receipt. If they are, they need to go through advancement. If not, if someone just wants to give you $20 for the group, you can take that to the box office. If you're unsure, please direct them to the giving website. That way they can clarify on there if they're looking for that receipt or not. One of the specific policies that the university has when it comes to student organization is imprinting apparel. The university has an agreement with a company called OmniSource to be their sole imprinting company. They're a very good company, and we've worked with them many times in the past. They're very eager to work with students. The main person to contact is Megan Works. Their email is listed there, and works@omnisourcemarketing.com. If your group is looking to make t-shirts or anything like that specifically, please contact Megan to see if they can work with you. Sports clubs, this is where another differential is. If you're looking to make jerseys or something very specific apparel wise, please reach out to Maham. They have the connections to companies that make those specific things. They can help you with that. But for the vast majority of organizations, you need to work with OmniSource for apparel, t-shirts, club apparel, anything like that. Please start with OmniSource, and if they're unable to make the item you need, we can look at alternatives at that point, but we need to try to make an effort to go through OmniSource first to make sure that if it's possible, they can help with whatever is needed. Travel. If your organization is looking to travel this semester, all travel requires completion and approval of the event registration risk management form. This needs to be submitted at least 21 days before the expected travel date. This gives the CSI office and all appropriate parties time to review the event, review the risk management form to make sure that everything is in place. All the proper procedures are being followed, and that the event is allowed to go on with the current state of the world being what it is. It is highly recommended that you wait for your travel to be approved before moving forward with hotel booking accommodations. This is because if you make a booking accommodation and there's not a way to cancel the hotel booking, your organization is responsible for that hotel fee, even if it can't be canceled. We will do everything we can in our office to help you get a refund or change the accommodations if possible. But if something does not get approved and your organization is not authorized to travel, it is the group's responsibility to still pay those obligations. Please note that all procedures are subject to change based on global situations, as we mentioned. Travel. When doing travel, you have the hotel booking site, which is available here, studenttravel.udane.edu. This acts just like a kayak or hotels.com. You can go in, search the days, the locations that you're looking for in a hotel. If there's specific amenities you need, you can also choose those. You click search, it'll give you a list of hotels with the prices and availability. You go through that process just like you would on a hotels.com or any of those. And then at the end, it'll tell you to assign it to an administrator. That comes to the CSI office, where we are able to review it, make sure your event has been approved, as we discussed on the previous slide. And as long as everything is approved, we will assign that charge to one of the university PCards that we mentioned. And then the group doesn't have to worry about paying for the hotel out of pocket or anything like that when they show up. Everything is assigned to the group's FOPL on the back end of things in the university's accounting system. Vehicles. If you go through the financial request form, you can select enterprise. It'll ask you for dates and times. You can reserve vehicles that way if you're trying to reserve a vehicle to use. CSI and Campus Rec will work to contact enterprise to make sure those reservations are confirmed. The usual location is the Dayton Mall location, but if another location is requested, we can also work to make that accommodation. There is another enterprise downtown, a little bit closer. Usually their vehicle selection is a little bit more limited though. Please note that all rental drivers must be certified and 21 years old. There's a link there in the slides that can be used to complete that certification before traveling. These slides will be sent out to all of you after the presentation as well, so that if there is any links or anything you want to use for a reference, it will be made available. Examples of income. So forms of income your group may have is membership dues that it collects, donations from members or events that you have, fundraising or fundraising events, university account transfers if you have a department sponsoring you. And then if your group has an event and there is an entry fee deposit to the event, those funds can also be used as income. As we mentioned in one of the previous slides, all of this can be either deposited at the box office on the first floor of Kennedy Union, or it can be brought up to the second floor in the CS and the Center for Student Involvement office, where we can also note the donations, and we will work with the Office of Student Accounts to make sure those funds are deposited as soon as possible. All the things I just mentioned, you can complete those at the Center for Student Involvement. You can take the funds to the Office of Student Accounts in the Bursar's office to make those deposits as well. But please note that those funds may take longer, and there is an envelope that has to be filled out. We get multiple emails that an envelope wasn't filled out, and we have to track down who the funds were from, what it was for, which organization it was for, and that delays the process of those funds showing up in the student organization's account. We highly recommend that the funds are brought to the Center for Student Involvement so that we can note it, make sure we have all the information about your student organization, and then we take it over and make sure that it gets put directly in the hands of the Office of Student Accounts. We can accept cash and checks. Checks are made out to the University of Dayton / club name. And as when mentioned, it's St. Mary's room 108. Sorry for that missing piece of information in the slide there. We can also do online deposits on 1850. If your organization wants to try to sell something on there, we can set that up to allow to accept credit card information. If your group is interested in doing this for something, please reach out for the Center for Student Involvement, and we will help set that up and make sure that everything is working properly on that end. Some other information to be aware of, the university is a tax exempt or entity, as all student organizations are recognized student organizations in the Center for Student Involvement. You fall under that distinction of being a tax exempt organization. So no purchases should have sales tax on them. The only exception to this would be if you're purchasing gas from traveling, and hotels will have some taxes on there as well. Gift tax, please note that if your organization is giving away cash or gift cards with a value of greater than $1, it is considered a gift and are taxable for the recipient of that gift. We have a gift form that has to be filled out and completed. So if you plan to do that, please reach out to our office so we can make sure that you have that form and you can get it filled out and brought back to our office so we can make sure it is properly documented. All non-cash, that should just be non-cash. I'm sorry for the confusion. Non-cash gifts or prizes valued over $100 or more are considered taxable. So if your group is giving away cash or a gift card, it needs to be have the tax form filled out. If you're giving away a non-cash gift card award valued at over $100, it also needs that form. If it's, say it's like a printer or something under $100, it does not need that form. And please do not buy items that are intended for individual members with intentions of being reimbursed. This is talking about don't buy a member of the organization something that they personally want with group funds and then try to be reimbursed that way. Avoid that. Contract services. If your organization is looking to have a any sort of event that requires a contract, a guest speaker would need a contract. Reserving a off-campus venue would require a contract. Renting a bus would require a contract. Any of those or anything that requires a signature that needs to be brought to and submitted to the Center for Student Involvement, where the Executive Director of Student Life can sign it. Student presidents, treasurers are not allowed to sign those. As we mentioned before, you are representing the university, so the university has to review those contracts to make sure that they follow all the university's policies and procedures, and the office needs to be the one to sign those. Moving forward, funding opportunities. When it comes to crowdfunding, recognized student organizations have to use what's called Flyer Funder. It's the only form of crowdfunding that is allowed by university organizations. It works by allowing student organizations to kind of showcase their projects and seek support. Applications for the spring crowdfunding are due Monday, February 7th. So please be aware of that if you are looking to have your group kind of crowdfund some sort of project. Donations during One Day, One Date will also be included in this. So please be aware that that is a great opportunity for your organization to raise funds for future endeavors and projects. If you're looking for more information about this or the application, you can go to your.udayton.edu crowdfunding. You can also email flyerfunder@udayton.edu, and you can also call the number to learn more if you have any questions specifically about the Flyer Funder. More general funding opportunities, SGA funding opportunities are available both semesters, spring and fall. The spring semester will be opening up soon. We don't have the exact dates for those, but please be on the lookout. SGA will be sending that to organization officers. Oh, excuse me. SGA spring funding is now open, so please be aware of that. And if you're looking to apply for that funding, you can do so by going to SGA's website and learning more about it there. If you need funding in addition to the spring funding, or after spring funding closes, you find your organization still needs funds, they always accept special request funding. More information on that can be found on the SGA's website as well. We also, in the past, have had UD late night grants. Those grants are available to organizations that put on events that have the following criteria. Must be open to all students. The event must be held between the hours of 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. and the events must be alcohol and drug free, obviously. We are still working on getting all of that information finalized. If you have any questions about that specifically, please reach out to studentorgsmoney@udayton.edu. We will now transition into the demo portion of the presentation. Once you log into 1850, as we mentioned, you'll be brought to this page. You can find your organization by going to the Groups tab. For the purposes of demonstration today, we will be using the Christmas on Campus page. When you come to Christmas on Campus's page, as I mentioned, the first thing you should do is make sure your officers are up to date. That can be found under the Dashboard tab under Officers. You can go into here, and in here, as we mentioned, you can add an officer, and then please make sure that their label is up to date with something. We would prefer it to be president treasurer, but if that's not how your organization is structured, you can also do it as officer, and we will try to make sure that we accommodate that when sending out information. Specifically to this presentation, the Money tab, when you click on this, it will automatically open up the accounting book. The first thing you should see on this page is the financial management tool. As we mentioned, the financial management tool has all sorts of resources and step-by-step instructions on how to do anything we covered in this presentation today. So when you click that, it'll automatically open up, and you can select what you're trying to do. If you're trying to make a purchase, if you want to check your organization's account or the SGA balance, if you're looking to request SGA funding, you can click any of these to learn more about how to do each of those. Once you go into making a purchase, you can go in here, you'll click organizational funds. For this example, as we mentioned, we have Christmas on campus, which is a bad example for this one because of the them working so closely with an organization. They work very closely with the university, so they have that little screen there. If you receive that screen, please reach out to our office and we will work with you to figure out where your funds are. Most organizations will come to this screen next. It'll open up with a faux pol. Organizations won't have 0000. They'll have a full string of 36 digits right here. This is very helpful when filling out information on campus requisition forms if you're looking to go to the bookstore or the copy center. It's also helpful when on Runway to complete an order. You'll click correct, and then it'll give you steps on the next thing you can do as well. We will come back to this. I want to finish looking at 1850. And when we do the Runway example, we will also look at that. So as we mentioned, this is the accounting book. Here you can see your organizational ledger's revenues. So deposits into the account, expenses coming out of the account, and then the current balance. Please note that it also represents SGA funds here as well. We are aware that it is confusing having a group funds line. Unfortunately, with the website being built the way it is, this group funds line does not have the functionality we need for working with so many groups on such a large scale. So just ignore this line as much as possible. It should always be 0. If it's not, please contact our office and we can help zero that out for your organization. Down here in the transactions, this is where all of the transactions that are being reported in the revenue and expenses will be held. Note credits are revenues, debits are expenses. What you'll commonly see in this section is something called an API generated transaction. What this is, as I mentioned earlier, the university's working with UDIT to automatically generate those transactions based on when they are reported to the university's official accounting system. If you notice any discrepancies with those, please report it to the Center for Student Involvement at that studentorgsmoney@udayton.edu email. We will work to get those resolved as soon as possible. If you are looking to make a purchase, you will go to the budgeting tab. Here, once again, you'll find another link at the very top of the page for the financial management tool. Please always start here if you don't know where to go or what steps to take to make the purchase you are looking for. Under that will be the request payment button. This is where you'll click to get the financial request form where you can request PCards or document Runway purchases, things like that. So for this example, we can walk through quickly. You'll select your organization on this page, as we mentioned, Christmas on campus. We would select that. We select the group funds because that is what we're trying to use from the organizational ledger. We click next. We want to make a purchase. For this, let's say we want to go to the local Kroger or Walmart with a purchasing card to make a purchase for craft supplies for Christmas on campus. Since none of these are options, we would select these other goods and supplies, and it would ask us if we want to use a PCard or Runway. For this example, we're going to choose PCard. Click next. It will now bring up specific PCard related questions. Note, if your group is trying to make a specific purchase from a website that's not available in Runway, our office, the Center for Student Involvement, can help make that purchase. This applies mostly to Amazon purchases. If your group is looking to buy something specifically from Amazon, please do not try to find it in Runway. Amazon is just kind of an umbrella company for lots of little smaller suppliers, as well as like Etsy. Those will not be found. Those purchases will have to go through a PCard, and those purchases will have to go through the university's CSI office. We have a specific tax exempt Amazon account so that if you need to make that purchase, you would select the online one. It'll give you a form to upload. It'll ask you if you're using Amazon. Our office will assist you in completing this purchase. But for this one, as we mentioned, we're going to use the example of going in store. It'll ask you for a phone number so we can get in contact with you. It'll then ask you if you're specifically trying to use a PCard to go to a grocery store. Gordon Food Services, located in Kettering, about 5 miles from campus is the preferred grocery store for our university. As I mentioned, we have 3 university purchasing cards available for student organizations. Every student organization has a Gordon Food Service specific card available to them in the Center for Student Involvement. So if your group is ever trying to buy groceries last minute for an event tomorrow or the next day, if you, the best option would be to try to get that GFS card for your specific organization. You can do that through this form to do that. And those cards are usually always available for our student organizations. But for this one, as we mentioned, we're going to try to go to Kroger or Walmart. So we'll click no. It'll ask us which store we are trying to go to. It'll ask us which day we are requesting the card. So if we wanted it tomorrow, we could do that. Please note that we ask for 24 hours notice on reservations. This is 1, to give our office time to have the card and the paperwork prepared and documented. And 2, in most cases, if you are trying to make a request within 24 hours, those 3 purchasing cards have already been reserved and you will not be able to use it anyway. So please try to plan out further than 24 hours. For this example, we'll hit Monday, and then time to pick up. The Center for Student Involvement is open 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Please do not request to pick up the card at 11 p.m. There will not be somebody in the office to help you. It will not get approved. Don't do that. Please be aware also that some members of the office do leave around between the hours of 12 and 1. We understand that this is also a time to be available for students, so we can accommodate that under some circumstances. But please be aware of that is everyone's lunch hour. Once you complete that, you will just give your signature that you understand that the P card is your responsibility as the officer of the organization, and you will return it at the agreed upon time, date and time specified. You will click next. You'll just signature again that you will follow all university policies and procedures, and then you will submit the request there. As I mentioned during the slideshow, please note that submission does not mean that your reservation is complete. Somebody from our office will reach out and make sure that the date and time does work and there is a card available. Once you do that, it should pop up somewhere on here that you have that available. And then the expense, once completed, will appear on this accounting book page under the transactions. One thing to note about this is that, especially for P cards specifically, those are what's called reconciled once a month by the university. So if you were to make a purchase tomorrow using a university's purchasing card, it will not appear on this transaction page until February, probably the 2nd week in February at the earliest. So it is very important that your organization is keeping track of the pending expenses that were on here. This is something that most organizations won't have to worry about because they won't be spending that many funds on something, but it is something to be aware of. And please, when you transition your officers at the end of whichever semester you do that, they are aware of any pending charges that are still on the group page. If you have a large national dues or like a registration fee pending, please make sure that they are aware of that so they don't go and overspend from the account and create an issue down the line for the organization. As we mentioned, Runway is the preferred means for organizations to make purchases when possible. Once you log into Runway, you'll be greeted by this page. Here in the center, you have what we call showcases. And these showcases are websites that you can go to, and they act just like any other showcase any website that you would go to on your own. For this example, we can go to Home Depot. Once you click on the page, it will bring up a location to pick up from. We'll pick the Beaver Creek store. Once you select that, it gives you a website, as we mentioned, just like Home Depot, depending on what your group is looking for. I know an example in the past is we've had, Studio Theater needed to purchase lumber for a set that they were doing for a play they had put on. So that's something that they may do in the future with this one. If they say they want this pallet wood, you'll click this and you brought to this screen. It'll bring up any changes and flag them if needed. You click that. If this is all you need, you can click check out. And it'll bring you back to Runway where you can review, make sure everything that you want in your order is there. Click the proceed to checkout. And then it's going to bring you to this page where it will have red X's where things are needed. Notice that the information that needs to be added is the accounting codes, which is the faux pol string. As I mentioned earlier, you can go into the financial management tool, and under most organizations, it'll have that string there. Let me go ahead and just, for demonstration purposes, grab a different organization to show you what that looks like. There's that code. To get the account code where it's missing the numbers right now, you would just go through the tool to get that. With those, you'll go into each one of these. We know it's repetitive. We're sorry. We talked to the procurement system. They're trying to find a solution, but at this time, this is what it is. You'll go in here. You can find this information, and you can enter each of these 6-digit codes to that specific one here. Oops, I'm sorry. I put 6 and 7, 8. And your organization will pop up there. You continue that through all of these strings, hit save. It'll populate those there. Business purpose, we just need to know what you're purchasing this for. It can be as easy as supplies for a student organization event. Like this one, we can say the lumber could be supplies for set for student organization. The university just needs to know what it is and do that. Once all those are corrected, this will go away and you'll have this assign cart button up here. As we mentioned, you can search for either myself or Gwen Fox Stump. You can just type in my last name there and it'll pop up. I'm Bobby Jagowski, as I mentioned. You click that, hit assign, the cart will be assigned to me. I'll review it and make sure that the accompanying payment request is submitted in Runway. And once all of that is approved, it'll be moved forward and everything will be good to go. One other thing I just want to make sure people are aware of is, as I mentioned, the showcases are there. If you have an invoice to pay national dues or need to pay a registration fee, the payment request / check request is right here. This is what you'll fill out to submit that. And at the bottom is where you can attach that invoice. And then you do the same process on this form. You click the go button. It takes you to the cart. You fill out that faux pol and the business purpose, and you assign the cart to me, and I take care of the rest. If you were looking to see if somebody is a supplier in Runway, on the left side here, you can go in and search for a supplier. As we mentioned, anyone that is a student employee, I believe, is registered as a supplier in 1850. If a student needs to be reimbursed and they're not registered as a supplier, you can just click the request button and click request new supplier, and it'll ask you some basic information, the student's name, an address, a phone number, and an email. That student will then get an email to complete the rest of the information, and they'll get approved in the system, and that reimbursement can go through. If you have any questions with this, as always, you can reach out to the Center for Student Involvement. We are more than happy to help assist, answer any questions, and kind of walk through these as needed. We just request that you please try to use the financial management tool before you reach out to us, because it is a very valuable resource and it has a lot of step-by-step instructions on how to do these things. We do understand that it can be confusing and overwhelming. So if you do find yourself stuck or having questions about it, please feel free to reach out. studentorgsmoney@udayton.edu is available. With that, I think that answers a lot of the questions and covers a lot of the material we had for this presentation. What I want to do now is, for attendance purposes, we ask that you, sorry about that. You can scan the QR code. There's a short survey, 3 questions that can be answered. Just lets us know that you attended this event, that which organization you're representing for this event, and any feedback you may have about it. We can also answer any questions that you may have in the chat, or we can also try to answer them through if anybody wants to unmute their mic, but please be aware that there is 90 of you in here. So if everybody unmutes at once, it's going to get a little chaotic. So as mentioned, if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to through the chat as well.
Hi, all. It's Gwen here. I've got a couple private messages asking for the link to the QR code. Bobby, do you have that by any chance that you could put into the chat? There's some folks that can't scan the QR code.
Yes, I can put it in the chat, and thank you for reminding me of that. It is actually also set. Each of you, if you are registered on 1850, you will get an email with the link to the survey as well. So let me grab that real quick and I will put it in the chat. But also you can, if you're registered for the event 1850, you will also get the email with the link.
Awesome. And if you are here representing more than one organization, you should be able to type more than one into that survey. Is that correct, Bobby?
Yes, there's a box that asks for your feedback or suggestions you may have. Just go ahead and put in there. I'm here representing X, Y, and Z organizations, and we will make note of that on our end as well. Sorry for the delay. I'm just trying to get everything loaded up here. Okay, in the chat is that is the link to the post-training survey. As I mentioned, please fill that out. If you don't have any suggestions or anything, don't feel like you have to put anything, but please make sure you complete it so that we know you're here representing whichever organization you work with.
And Bobby, where will this presentation be posted so that folks are able to reach back out to it when they need to reference it?
Great question. We will be posting this to YouTube, and we will send out links and also have a link available on the CSI homepage. Let's see. Which also has a lot of helpful links available on there as well. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. And I will share my screen again. If you go into groups and you go to Center for Student Involvement, this should be the landing page you get. Under financial forms, there will be a link to the video once it is posted as well. That should be posted within the next day or two. As I mentioned, an email will be sent out to all the participants with a link to the video and as well as a link to where the presentation will live as well for future reference. Gwen, I have a question. Officer reached out and I can't remember exactly, so I want to ask you to clarify. They're planning a trip and they're using personal drivers, or drivers are planning to drive their own vehicles. Do those drivers also have to be 21? Is that university policy or is that just enterprise policy?
If they're driving their own car, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, no, as if you are driving your own car and you have insurance through your parents or through yourself, then you can be of whatever age you currently are and covered by your insurance. So yes, you do not need to be 21 years old.
Perfect. And also it was mentioned in there, but I want to reiterate for people, even if you're driving your own personal car, you do need to be a registered driver using that link that we showed earlier.
Yes, and I know that that is not the same message that was given at the president's meeting yesterday. We misspoke. So yes, even if you are driving your own car, you do need to take the driver registration through UD, and it's quite short and not difficult. So please don't let that be a barrier to you being a driver. Bobby, did you put the survey link in the chat?
Yeah, I can play it again.
Thank you.
Or, oh, yeah, sorry.
There we go.
Somehow I was on the waiting room participant site since, so all those people in the waiting room are getting to fill out the survey.
If by any chance your group is not represented in the dropdown of what organization you are in, pick whatever the first group is, and in the comment box, please write what organization you are here representing. I think there's a couple of folks that are representing groups that maybe didn't make that dropdown list. Sorry, 6-year-old in my background.
I have a quick question. I'm representing the Solar Splash Club, and the past semester, we were trying to make a private purchase to obtain like a small boat, like a rowboat type thing for our club, because it's one of the kind of more essential things to build, like creating our project. And obviously that's not exactly one of, like an authorized purchasing method. There's not a great way to go about doing it. So we've been trying to work with people to figure out what exactly we need to do for that. And I haven't really been getting quite the information I'm looking for. And I was wondering if there's any way that I could just set up a meeting with some of the officers in my group and the right person, who I'm not entirely sure exactly who the right person would be to set up that meeting with would be, but it's kind of important that we determine if there's really even going to be a way that we would be able to do that.
Yes, for sure. Ian, can you send me, Gwen, an email? I'll put my email here in the chat. I know I was a part of that original boat conversation, and I will make sure to get a meeting set up with you and whoever that right person is in the very near future. So Ian, go ahead and send me an email. I just put my email in the chat, and I will make sure we make that happen.
Awesome, thank you.
For sure. Do any of the remaining folks here have any questions that you want to unmute and ask? Or in the chat?
I have a question. I've been in contact with the SGA office, and I just chatted Robert in the chat and he responded to me, but I saw the credit go into our 1850. And I'm wondering how to transfer that money into our sororities bill highway account.
So that is a little more complicated. So we'll have to have a chat with Evan to figure that out. Can you tell me what group are you with?
Chi Omega.
Omega. Okay. And Shannon.
Yes, we can also like email or
yeah, sure. Are you Sims S? What's your number?
Yes, Sims S5.
Okay, cool. I will chat with Evan or Alexandra tomorrow, and I will send you an email with what we should do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your help.
Sure thing. All right, Bobby, I think we might be done.